I would like to welcome from London Dr. Marcos Papadopoulos, expert in international relations and specialist in the Middle Eastern affairs. At the outset, Doctor, do you think the crisis of trust, which Iran repeatedly spoke about, do you think the trust issue might be an obstacle that prevents the Iranian to show flexibility or trust in their negotiations with the US?
I most certainly do. Last year and at the start of this year, the Iranian government entered into dialogue with the Americans, and the Iranians were candid in what they expected from the Americans, and at the same time, the Iranians took into very serious consideration what the Americans wanted from the Iranians. And then America instigates a criminal, murderous war against Iran and the Iranian people, which has involved the massacre of over 150 Iranian schoolgirls in Minab. That will leave a very deep scar on the Iranian national psyche. And so it is not just Iranian politicians who will be reluctant to trust a word that comes from Washington, but also ordinary Iranians. That said, however, the Iranian government is a very prudent one, is a very intelligent one, and they understand that America is a military superpower, and Iran emerged victorious in this war. However, it is not, of course, in the interests for Iran to indefinitely be in a state of war with a military superpower. So that is why the Iranians are talking to the Americans via the Pakistanis.
Trump is still speaking about Iran's desire to secure a deal and to come back to the negotiation table. Are we speaking here about a genuine desire from Iran, or, according to many statements for President Trump, he is sending other message this time?
We shouldn't attach much importance to anything that Trump says. Trump is in a very serious situation. He is a very desperate man. Ultimately, he instigated this war against Iran because he is controlled by the Israelis. I suspect that deep down, Trump did not want this war, but as I said, he is beholden to the Israelis. That is why he is experiencing extreme stress at this moment in time. So he is looking for a way out. He is looking to secure a permanent truce with Iran. But the Iranians will look at a permanent truce and wonder to themselves, well, is it a permanent truce? What's to say that in a year from now, the Americans and the Israelis will not commence with another war against Iran? So the Iranians, as I said moments ago, they have emerged victorious in this war, but at the same time, they don't want to be at war with America permanently. So they are going to have to bite the bullet, so to speak, and listen to what the Trump administration wants. Whether the two can secure a permanent ceasefire is very uncertain. And I say it's very uncertain because Trump is beholden to the Israelis, and the Israelis want the war with Iran to continue indefinitely. So how Trump can get out of what is a very precarious situation for him, I don't really know.
Iran is not negotiating from weakness until this moment, especially after the recent threats and escalation by President Trump. They come to a negotiation table. What can make Iran accept the US terms?
Yes, as you correctly said, Iran comes to the negotiating table from a position of strength in that the Iranian military inflicted grievous damage on the American military and grievous damage on the Israeli military and on Israel as a whole. And even though Trump has now commenced with a naval blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, the Iranians know that not only is it illegal, but it is not practical. It is not practical because the Americans cannot maintain it in the long term. Why? Because it will affect every single country in the world. And the Americans do not want to antagonize every single country in the world, especially the Arab Gulf countries who depend on the Strait of Hormuz being opened so that they can export their oil to all four corners of the world. So the Iranians are at the negotiating table with from a position of strength. So in a way, they can dictate to the Americans how a permanent ceasefire can be established. But this must be seen in the context of Israel, because Israel, as I said, wants the war to continue, and Trump is beholden to the Israelis. So how can America come to a permanent truce with Iran when the Israelis exert tremendous influence and power, not just in Washington as alone, but throughout the Trump administration? It's not impossible. It could be that Trump will have to step down in order for America to be able to establish a permanent ceasefire with Iran.
According to the Iranian president's statement, Pezeshkian said that the Iranian people has filled the plans of the enemies with the unity and exceptional work. Do you think this is a point the US and Israel are working on in order to destabilize stability in Iran and create divisions between Iran? Do you think US and Israelis continue to play on this point to increase divisions between the people?
Both America and Israel know that their military campaign against Iran failed and failed abysmally. They understand that the Iranian people are more united today than they were even before the war, in that Iranians who have very profound disagreements with policies of the Iranian government are now united with the Iranian government against America and Israel. The Americans and the Israelis clearly underestimated not just the pious nature of the vast majority of the Iranian people, but also the nationalism of the Iranian people. The Iranian people will never, ever tolerate Iran being controlled by a foreign power. So the Americans and the Israelis, even if they continue the war against Iran, one has to wonder, what is their objective? Because if they failed now to topple the Iranian government, how will they succeed in the next 6 months, for example? The Iranian people know the terrible losses in civilian life that Iran incurred. They know about how many children were murdered by the Americans and the Israelis, and the Iranian people are very, very angry, and they are prepared to keep on fighting against America and Israel to defend Iran, but also to avenge the deaths of Iranian people, especially Iranian children. So the Americans and the Israelis are in a very difficult situation.
I would like to thank you so much. You have joined from London, Dr. Marcos Papadopoulos, expert in international relations. Thanks so much for being with us. Thank you, sir.
Thank you for your translations.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you. Bye.